theme of this plan gathering. And it's really to do with the professionalism of the badges, of the documentation, the program. Everything is so structured. The welcome packs, when it happened, it happened. People got when they were supposed to get it. And really just from the floor, just to say a big thank you for that. Absolutely. And for, if I may say this, she is fastidious in her detail. Don't ask me what it means, but it sounds good. But I think she knows what I mean.
But you know what, you should acknowledge Ronan as well.
Absolutely,
Because,
yeah. I haven't forgotten Ronan. Ronan is quietly working in the background, and I know has been a huge support in this. And you know something, guys? It would not have happened if Karen and Ronan had not been involved. And I'm happy to declare, that it does take a huge amount of organisation, and we bring different types of strengths to its organisation. I'd like to thank our Rhoda Kelly here at the Clans of Ireland today, who certainly impressed us with the ceremony of the inauguration. I'd like to thank Dick Cronin for the tour of Dysert and indeed the lovely lecture that he gave about the castle. Rebecca Crow, who is on the new Dysert Castle Association, and she did a lot of preparation. Gave out the food and coffee, so expected that. And maybe another shout out to Jane O'Brien last night for a wonderful lecture on the O'Brien and ODs, and I suppose socially and culturally Middle Ireland to reasonably present day. Again, I'd like to thank Chris O'Day, who's Secretary of the Clan Association and is standing down from that role. And I'd like to thank her for all her work and indeed all the minutes that have been produced. And it's not just the last 4 years. How long is it?
2008, I guess, when.
2008.
Who's good at maths? Is that 14 years?
When did we start?
I followed Joni's footsteps.
So thank you for that. Grant Day for his lecture here this afternoon. And I've already acknowledged Joni as our past chieftain, and again, Tom and Ruth as our webmasters. And my apologies if I've left anybody out. But, really what's coming across there, it's a collective committee, it's a collective group of people that are involved to make this happen. We're over 32 years in operation. We kept, I suppose, the momentum going during Zoom, and I have to thank Tom O'Day, our internet provider, for setting up business Zoom for us. And it really worked well, I think. I mean, fair enough, it may have been 10 o'clock in Dublin for me. It could have been 6 hours behind, 5 hours, and 12 hours ahead in Australia. But nobody ever complained. Everybody turned up. We had an agenda, we had fun, and we generally got our business done. And it was actually through Zoom that we agreed to have this clan gathering as we are having it now. So it did work. And you know something, there was something comfortable about working from home. And one thing that was brought home to me, I felt when people arrived on Thursday, we knew each other. It was comfortable. Whereas it was normally 3 years before we met. And I'm dreadful when it came to names. I'm saying, tell me who that is. This time around, it was just so much easier. And I think that was one of the benefits that came from that. Numbers are smaller this year due to COVID. Unfortunately, many of our Southern Hemisphere friends are not here, but we have on Anne Morahan representing them, and we still have a good turnout. It has always been a challenge for us, but there is the lack of Irish participation. I call it the Indigenous OTs. We did have some of them today. We will have more of them on Sunday night. It is always a battle to encourage them to be more involved, but I think that generally is a challenge. The newsletter was sent out over the last 4 years. How many editions? It was
4 years.
for a year. So nearly 16 newsletters have been sent out. We had Kathy O'Day Preston, who was the editor who had produced many newsletters in respect to that. And do I need to, is there somebody for you to go over them?
Yeah, one of the girls from Iowa for a
Yeah.
very short
Yes.
period of time.
So just to acknowledge that, and indeed Joni took the mantle then after that. But that is one of the vacancies or roles that we have at the moment, is to look for a new editor to continue with our newsletter. But we'll throw that up to the floor shortly. There are some changes to the constitution that we'll talk about in a few moments. And there's the Linear and Tikra project with the Clans of Ireland, which Rhoda Kelly mentioned today. And it's going through particular manuscripts to have them translated. And the reason that we have got involved is that it particularly relates to Munster. And I'm confident that we will certainly be able to have more information in respect of OT families and their involvement in the community from the Middle Ages on. So I do feel it's a worthwhile project to be involved in. We'll talk about membership in a few moments' time. I will be stepping down as chairperson from the plan, but we will look at a nomination in my place for that. I suppose what I want to do is to put my energies into the role as chieftain. It's interesting today, and I was just remarking on it, I felt I was MC, chairperson, and chieftain or administrator, but it is a collective effort by all of us. So I am again looking to the floor and maybe looking to the table here as to how we can maintain that continuity. We have a questionnaire included in the pack which you would have received, and that's to give us feedback of what we could do better, or maybe what we need to leave out. And that's due to help us plan again in 3 years' time, what would make it better. And there will be some discussion with regard to when the clan gathering should be held or not held. We have traditionally held it in July, and that was for various reasons, to accommodate people on their holidays. And in 2018, we moved it to May to make it to coincide with the 700th anniversary. But it doesn't have to be in July. We had some discussion on that on Thursday night, but maybe to have some idea, could it be April, could it be May, could it be June, could it be August, could it be September? Can it be out of key, maybe price times, particularly here in Ireland, because it is an expensive time, June, July, August. So it's to consider what other alternatives could work for us in respect to that. So that's really the report that I just want to give you, and I suppose I'm really raising more questions as to what the future will look like, looking at the continuity of the officers, and maybe thinking about future clan gatherings and when we should have them in times to just sum up what I have said there. Any questions for me as the chair? Okay. No.
Shane?
Yes.
Any questions about time of year versus younger people that are in school still, or is that a criteria that we're looking at, or is this an aging organization that is not dependent on the children?
I'll make an answer to that, but I'm more than happy to have some of my officers respond to that too. That did come up around when we spoke about it on Thursday night. And yes, it is an aging participation that comes to the clan gatherings. Where we did see maybe a number of younger children or indeed maybe teenage children was particularly in 2018. And, you know, this is summertime here. Okay, it's coming out of the pandemic. It's an expensive time. You know, there are no young adults, there are no young children. So we said the number of children that have come in the past have been relatively few. And maybe for the relatively few, I'm not sure that it maybe should dictate particularly the time that we should have it when I look at the profile that's here in front of me. So I hope that's as diplomatic as I can come back to you. Okay. Yes.
Yeah, but I would say, I brought my 2 grandchildren this year, and I wouldn't have brought them if it hadn't been the summertime. And I think we, as you say, we've got a more aging group, but one of the things the organization needs to do is get more young blood. And that's one of the reasons I think summertime has an advantage, is that people can bring younger people who might be involved in it. Now, whether my grandchildren will be involved, I don't know. I'm hoping they will. And I'm hoping this encouragement. But that's just a thought.
No, I accept what you're saying, and indeed that has been a challenge to us, not just this year, but literally going back certainly 8-12 years, where we have younger people coming. And I put my hands up. I have 2 sons, one of who is down here today. Yes, they love coming down. Do they want to get involved at this stage? No.
No.
It's not an important part of their life. They think it's great that their dad is involved. And that is a challenge that we have had, and we have worked so hard at it, but we haven't got that pipeline of maybe new blood and new commitment. And maybe my rhetorical question to you is, well, how do we do that? Because we have tried, and it's scary because we are aging and we're not seeing the pipeline coming through.
But one of the things is, if they're exposed to it, my kids are going to consider, you know, they're not going to want to come 3 years probably, but maybe when they're married, and they think, boy, I should take my kids there. I'd like to be involved.
The other thing that came up was teachers, you know, wouldn't be able to come in May. However, last time, when it was in May, now it was a stellar celebration,
Yeah,
you know, for the battle, but people came.
Right.
So I think we cannot cover every eventuality.
I mean, 2018, to Joni's point, we had over 200 people come. You know, that was a lot of people. Moving on. Karen.
Sure. No. I will make my report relatively quick because you do have a printed copy of it and a printed copy of the accounts. We are under just a little bit of time pressure. There are people coming into this room behind us, so we need a couple of minutes at the end of this meeting to pack everything up and get out. So if I go too quickly and you have some questions or you want to approach me at any stage to ask me anything about the treasurer's report, I'm happy to do that at any stage, but I will fly through it pretty quickly today. So the association is in a very healthy position, similar to what we would have reported in the 2018 accounts, that we're in a very healthy position. You'll see in the financials that there are actually 3 periods that we are reporting on in the financials. Normally we only report on 2, but because we had the gathering so early last year, we had not completed the financial year when we presented the accounts. So we presented accounts for the 4 years to the 30th of April, which is not the full period. The full period was to the 30th of June. So I've included those full accounts here because we didn't present them at the last general meeting that we had. And then the comparative period, this time is the 4 years then to the 30th of June, 2022. So our membership numbers are down, and obviously that's linked into what Shane is talking about, and we'll have some more discussions on membership. We had 6,600 subs in the same prior 4 year period. And in this period, we have just 4,470. So we have a challenge in front of us in terms of membership and how we maintain that. There are a number of projects that we expended money on, so they're detailed here, and hopefully the notes explain enough of those projects so that you understand what we have spent that money on. And then what I would like to do also is acknowledge Kevin O'Day, who is the registrar for the US account, where we hold funds of $914.07. And also Rosemary Powell in Australia, who is the treasurer there. And in the account as of the 31st of March, we held funds of $545.48. So we expect to be able to continue for the next 3-year period in a very positive position. We will be able to function properly based on the financial accounts that are presented here. I would encourage you to help us by purchasing some of the merchandise Ronan has down the back there. We'll have it available at the farewell dinner tomorrow night as well. So if you do want to purchase anything that would help us, those funds go straight to the clan. Also, Shane mentioned the farewell at the feedback survey. If you would like to bring those forms to the farewell dinner, it's the green forms that are in your registration pack. So it really helps us to shape and hear what you have to say about how things went this time around, helps us shape the next time around. And then just for myself, I would also like to thank Shane and Marguerite as well, because I know you couldn't do this without Marguerite. I know Shane was very generous in his praise for me, but we work very well as a team, and I really appreciate the work that he's done to help us to organize the gathering here this event. So I'm happy to take any questions. As I said, I've kept it very brief because we are just running a little bit behind schedule, but please do approach me if you have any questions at all. I'm happy to answer for you.
Can somebody nominate? And somebody second that? John, thank you. I noticed the next thing, and I move pretty quickly because I don't want to repeat myself. It's supposed to be the chieftain's address. Just to say, I'm honoured to take on the role. I'm honoured to have you with me in your membership. I'm so honoured to have the officers that are involved in the plan, and soon certainly brought us a lot closer. And we're trying to look at reaching out to a greater cohort of people that may be interested in joining the plan, and we have more work to do in respect to them. But we have put a structure in place through the representatives, and there is obviously a little bit more work that needs to be done in respect to that. We're so fortunate to have a website, you know, that's the envy of we're so lucky to have a website that is the envy of many other clans in Ireland. I know that we are accoladed by the clans of Ireland by how we organise our clan gatherings, the fact that we have such an international dimension, and equally that we have a website, you know, that is run very well. It's very current and it's updated very regularly. And I suppose we have done things in that we are able to have payments paid through PayPal. We're able to have the trip paid through PayPal, and that is only something that has happened in recent years. The challenge is how we maintain the interest. How do we get younger people involved? It's looking 3 years ahead, 6 years ahead, 9 years ahead. Where are we going to be? I'm not going to be as young then as I am now. And you know, a lot of us in the room who've been coming here 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 times. I mean, bearing in mind that this is our 11th. You know, when does it become a point when we say, well, I can't travel anymore? You know, I've done what I can do, and how do we maintain that interest and people to be involved? Because it does take people. It's not just being involved and being a member, but if you are part of the officer group, it's doing more than that. It's doing work. It's doing the newsletter. It's encouraging people to put articles in. It's working with Tom and Ruth on the internet. You know, if we're organizing a clan gathering, we're not waving a magic wand. It takes people, it takes effort. We need that commitment. It is a wonderful experience for those who come, but it's maintaining that high standard and that quality and that interest into the future. So we have searching questions that we need to ask ourselves as a membership on how we continue to do that. So I suppose I look forward to the challenges. I look forward to working with the committee that I have, and I do look forward to receiving any feedback from the membership as well. So as a chair, that's what I would like to say to you. No motions. Yeah. No. I'm going to move on to a couple of things. The election of the officers and clan representatives. I mentioned that we have two roles outstanding, potentially three roles outstanding. First role I'm going to put to the floor, and I have nominations for some of these roles. So as I mentioned, Chris O'Daly is going to stand down for the role as secretary. I have a nomination from Maureen Carey to take over that role. And unless there's any other nomination from the floor, I would look for somebody to put their hand up and nominate Maureen. Oh my God, so many hands. Marvin and Kevin. So just to say that Maureen has been duly elected.
She and Ron are online.
Yeah, just saying, Maureen, welcome aboard.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
And it'll be a Southern Hemisphere representation. The next role is to do with me. I am going to step down as chair, and I have a nominee in respect to that, if I may call that nominee, and it's Joni Keggy. So unless there's any other person being nominated from the floor, I'm going to ask for a nominee and a seconder. So Pat and John O'Day the third. Now, oh yes, no, I come back to the other one in a minute. In the Constitution, one of the officers, and this is to do with the check signing particularly, where Karen and I would always have signed checks, particularly, for example, Clans of Ireland, that type of thing. Because I'm stepping down as the chair, I'm suggesting that we have a role as a deputy chair to continue the continuity of check signing, particularly when it is in the island of Ireland. And I'm hoping I might make myself clear in respect to that. So by putting in that deputy chair, it means that if there are events in Ireland that where the chair may have been required, but that Joni is not able to come or participate, that the deputy chair can, and who is also the chieftain, can actually go in her place. So I'm looking to nominate myself into that role, and we will build that into the Constitution to reflect that. So I'm looking for somebody to nominate Grant and
Nominate you.
thank you. That's good. Now, the next one is probably the more thorny one, and this is to do with the editor of the Clan newsletter. We have reached out through the website a number of times this year. It is difficult maybe just to reel somebody in respect of that. Okay, there is work involved in respect of the newsletter. You know, it's being aware of the dates. It's somebody who has, you know, an aptitude to what the newsletter looks like, the design, looking at what's here, the branding. Yeah, looking at the branding that we have in respect to that. And I suppose chasing up people in respect of articles to make it interesting and informative for the people that read it. It's our way of connecting and keeping in touch with everybody. So I'm going to put it out to the floor. Is there anybody brave enough to put their hand up and say, yeah, I'll take it on. Let's do it on a trial basis. To be supported by Jodie until the person is confident and is happy to do it. I'm greeted by silence.
Yeah. I will continue to do it, but please provide articles. I mean, I hate to beg, and I will beg, I begged of Grant and Kevin and Patrick, and so please send stuff. I mean, that makes it a smidgen easier. God knows I'm not a publisher person, but our son is brilliant on that regard and set up the template. And that's, I just copy and paste, you know, from time to time. So that's relatively easy, but it's content that we really need, obviously. July will be full of content of this. Come October, different story.
Joan, if I may add to that, you know, tell your own story. You know, where do you come from? Do a color piece. You know, tell us about somebody who got married. You know, tell us something about where you live. You know, is there a trail worth visiting? You know, is there an ale house down the road that if you're passing through, we'd recommend you go there and have a beer? You know, it's not to make it too formal and that, but it's newsy, if I may use that word. Yes, Grant.
If you take me off the Western region, I'll take it
Huh?
First and seconded. Thanks, Grant.
Okay, well, I'll do July and then we'll talk for October. How about that?
Brilliant.
Okay.
And Grant, just to say, Jodie and I would always have worked very closely on that because I always made sure I had the chairman's article going in, and I tried to make it a colour piece. You know, I talk about family, I talk about things in County Clare, things in Dublin, and that's my contribution to
Well,
things.
people might be afraid to write because they don't think that's what we want. We want to know what's going on
Yeah.
with members of the clan.
Yeah.
What's going on in your part of the world?
Exactly.
Are you being new to, I don't know, are your Zoom calls for everybody or are they just of your? You do Zooms because you've got lots of material for your newsletter. If you're doing Zoom calls where somebody's doing a presentation, you know, to your clan, which we do in County Clare, you know, Zoom.
Yeah, the Zoom calls were really put together during COVID, and it was really the officers and some of the representatives that would have dived into that. And that was particularly looking at whether we were going to have a clan gathering or not. That was the primary focus because we had missed 2021. So what were we going to do for 2022? And maybe to allow some time to think about this, I would love to continue the Zoom calls. And there's nothing to prevent somebody joining it because the focus is not now going to be, well, is there a time gathering in 2023 or 2025 is out there. But some of the points that have been raised, you know, how do we generate interest? What can we look at in response? Maybe somebody has a light bulb moment that they want to tell us about in respect of the membership or the officers. And I think maybe coming out from this, now, I suppose the thing is, it's lovely to have people participating in a Zoom call, but if we have 20, 30 people and everybody wants to talk, but then we run into problems. So if we can keep it at a group of
just pick a theme for the day.
Yes, that's a good idea.
And everybody can say 2 sentences about that theme, whatever. Or, I mean, there's lots of ways, but if you want to get the young people, you've got to turn technology, you've got to do Facebook, you've got to do Zoom, you've got to do things where the young people.
Right,
will-
and we've talked about all this. The other thing we've talked about, because the Zoom has been a positive experience, not just for us having our own meetings, but those of us that belong to organizations that we've been doing Zoom webinars, that we're talking about DNA webinars and other kinds of things to try and draw people in that we hadn't previously thought of before. That the logistics of all that just hasn't been worked out yet.
Well, I can tell you that the size of the Clare Falls have quadrupled since we went to Zoom.
So that's something certainly to take on board, and we will do a review of this gathering and we'll decide what's the best way to take that forward. Okay. In respect of the other officers and the other positions that are in the plan, I'm going to make an assumption that it's an automatic continuation of people in those roles. So Kevin nominates that and a replacement for Grant. We'll have to look at that.
Well, not just Grant, but we've got Andy, and we need a Southern UK rep as well.
Do you want to raise that, the Southern UK rep? We have somebody from the UK.
Well, Michael D's not here, he would make the logical choice.
Okay, and who's the other rep?
Andy would be Southeast US.
That's Florida, is it?
No, we've got Florida. It would be like North Carolina, South Carolina.
Yeah.
And then Western, what are we doing with Western? I saw you talking back there.
We were just talking.
We did, they talked about picking up the southern western region also. They do the northwest. So they would pick up Colorado, Nevada.
Oh, and call it Southwest.
Just
Or
west.
Just West, okay. And that's gonna be who? Which one of you? Oh, both of you again. Okay.
I think it's very important to try Nancy. I brought her back in 2014. And I'm trying to get her involved. And I do think that you're exactly right to get them through technology and things like that. So I think you should take advantage of having somebody in their 20s that's interested.
Yeah, a young person.
Yeah, yeah, be the only young person at this.
That's good. That's great. Listen, I appreciate that. And maybe I'm not putting words in your mouth or anything like that, but Seattle sounds an awful lovely place for a time gathering.
Now, Cafanos, aren't you like part of the year in South Carolina?
Yes.
And
I'm not a member yet, so I won't.
we could have this conversation once you join.
Let's say it's something to chew on over dinner tonight. Okay. So
I do meet one of the criteria that you have there for the DNA. I don't have the screen.
Me
I just want to acknowledge, listen, what's just come through there. It's great that people put their hands up, without a sword to their spine or anything like that. And it's good that we have that come through.
Further discussion of OD's.
Absolutely. Any other business?
Matters of rising number 7.
Phrase.
Anybody listening?
Yeah, how do we raise this? When we were doing the Zoom calls, we were wondering how we would be able to to the election of the incoming Taoiseach. A lot of work have been put into, we look at voting online in respect of that. And it would have required a change in the constitution to facilitate that. Now, we have been looking at putting in that change, that it would include, not necessarily this time, but that we would put it in for a future time, that voting could take place online from people who are not attending the clan gathering. Whereas heretofore, the election of the Taoiseach takes place at the farewell dinner, where ballot papers are issued to paid up members, and an election takes place at that. Now, because we don't have a proportion of members coming this evening, today because of the pandemic, it's to look at, do we need something like that in the Constitution going forward? Members feel about that those who come to a clan gathering, that historically we elected a Taoiseach at the farewell banquet through a secret ballot. So what's the view on the floor?
Going forward with the newsletter, which just put a region survey in there and ask everyone's opinions, and then you have information to make a direction. Change, have a solution. Wait it up to see what everybody thinks. Okay.
I noticed that you had the questionnaire, the green sheets in our packets. And I thought to myself, I would much rather have had this also online to give you input after I've thought about it for days or whatever. But I think it would also be something you could put out to a lot of people who weren't able to be here and say, what would you want to see, or what would make you want to come?
We did a survey online during COVID. I can send you the results, and asking people about having a clan gathering, about where we would hold a clan gathering, and whether people wanted to be involved or not. Now, it didn't specifically talk about online voting or whatever, but again, it was an interesting set of results. And I'm not sure, is that up on the website? Yeah, I think what Tom and Ruth were obviously the initiators of that, but I'll certainly arrange for that through time, for that information to be put up on the website. But it's not necessarily, I know what you're saying, you need time to reflect on. Grant.
That could be one of the first things we put up on the newsletter too. And you could also, repeatedly put it in the newsletter, as a query to get the data that you're hunting for. But the newsletter could be a very good vehicle for that, not just the website, because people may not click on a particular page on the website. But the newsletter, if it happens to be the headline banner on the newsletter, page 1, front and center, then you get much more response to it from the whole membership rather than just a select group that are looking at the administration aspect of the organization.
And truthfully, people have said to me that they think the website is complicated. So I think that the website is the more simplistic way of getting important things out to people, as you say.
No, the newsletter.
The newsletter, what I say.
Newsletter.
Newsletter.
I haven't had enough to drink yet.
Ron did chime in to Marvin that he will continue in his Australian rep position.
Thank you. So, in relation to tonight, where we're having, tomorrow, the farewell dinner, we will continue with the practice that we have, where the nominations that have been put forward that the balloting will be done from. Is that correct?
Jen, I'm sorry, I thought when we had these Zoom meetings that we had agreed 4 options. And the one that we chose was because there were a lot of people who weren't coming. As you know, Ruth and Tom did a lot of work on the website to develop the online voting for this very reason. Ron and I spent hours testing it. And now, are we just going to wipe them? I don't think it's fair to the people from the Southern Hemisphere. They won't be able to vote.
We did that, and we only had 12 people who registered to vote on Zoom.
To vote on Zoom?
Yeah, to
I
link
think it
into
was to
it.
vote on Zoom, that was to attend the sessions on Zoom.
Yeah, but it's also, we're also zooming the election of the judge.
But the voting was separate, the voting was online, it wasn't on Zoom.
Yeah, but you
But
need
there weren't
to,
enough
sorry,
nominations.
you need to be
support
connected.
votes online.
To vote online, you have to be connected to Zoom to vote online.
Not only
You
that,
don't, no, you don't. You just go on, put your username in and click who you want to go and it goes. I was there doing the testing.
That's true, but that's a moot point. But one of the things was it would become a moot point if there was a nomination from the floor here. Right? Which we have now, a second nomination, which supposedly is going to be made tomorrow night. So I think that makes that whole online voting a moot point.
Yeah, I do have a message here from Tom that says, since there were only the one nomination, in essence, as a consequence, we will not be proceeding with the proposed online voting. The election will take place in the usual manner during the farewell banquet in July of 22.
Brandon?
So,
But now there's two.
Well, not yet.
well,
I mean,
Well,
but that doesn't happen until we do it
but
normally.
logistically, how would that be pulled off?
Well, wasn't that what all those meetings we discussed, how we would do it?
So I think in the last executive meeting, we agreed because there had been only just the one nomination that we would not proceed this time with the online voting, but that we should not scrap it as a possibility altogether that we would need to discuss. if
But we could
wanna get in the
still
future.
discuss it here, because it is conceivable that in the future, we might have a protracted period where we can't meet 3 or 4 years. Which has to then be, and Karen can correct me if I'm wrong, would need to be approved and entered into the Constitution, or we'd be back in the same boat here, just talking about it.
Brand?
when we had this discussion, the big issue that we ran into was that we had to correct the bylaws to allow online voting. And without doing that, then the online voting would be void. You know, so we have to address the bylaws first to allow that to occur, and then we can proceed from there. And the last that I remember was that we were going to consider that here to modify the bylaws to allow that to occur. And if that didn't happen here, that we didn't approve that, then we were going to be on our own old bylaw setup. So the bylaws are the hang up to the whole thing at this point.
So the bylaw, I mean, the constitution, the bylaw has not been changed.
Right.
Yeah.
I thought
We have to change it here.
They have to change it here right now. That's what we agreed.
That's how I thought the meeting went, was today, we were going to vote to change the bylaws. To do that is how I understood that Zoom meeting.
Me too.
However, we had only one nomination, so there was no urgency to change that.
But what if there's COVID again in 3 years? We try to change the bylaws today to account for next meeting. We don't have the same discussion 3 years.
Because it's just gonna keep dragging on and on. We should take the vote today like we had decided.
No, but we have no wordage. I mean, it usually, and again, speaking of how we do it in the US with our historical society, we provide the wordage of a potential change to our bylaws to the membership in advance. And then they come to the meeting and then they vote for or against it. But we didn't have a second nominee to cause
We could take a vote, like how I do on all the boards that I'm on. We could take a vote that we are going to change the bylaws on this. And then if we all agree we're going to do it, then you can get the lawyer to write up the new wordage of it and look at it,
No,
or whoever,
No, Lord.
no?
the back,
Having been in these discussions in other organizations, you're correct. You have to change the bylaws. You also have to provide the membership with the wording of the bylaws. And those people have to understand what will progress further from that bylaw change. So if you do not discuss how the voting will be conducted and counted, then your actions are fruitless. Because some people are going to think that by changing the bylaws so that it can be voted on then you're going to have, if you have the bylaws written that you want to change, as you want to change and highlight what you're changing and how it will progress from there, then you have a better chance of having it happen. And I, for one, think it's a very good idea to allow the entire membership to have the ability to vote. Now, you have a situation here where you have one nominee and now you have two. That doesn't mean that you cannot word the bylaws so that the election can take place after the planned meeting in a certain amount of time with a certain amount of control over how how someone is allowed to vote. You give them a number, you give them a code, however you do it, so that you know that only members are voting. And they only vote once. And at the end of your meeting here, you have the established ballot. And it's not going to change. But this at least allows people to do nominations up until the deadline.
sorry, if I heard you right, you're saying postpone the election until after. Is that what you said?
Well, that's against the bylaws.
Because
You have to change the bylaws.
we know that,
You have your official wording
that's correct.
set up. I don't know if you can do that between now and tomorrow. Can you?
Well, we're out tonight, it's hard to get it done tonight, you know. Sorry, I'm not being flippant here.
Okay, we have to change the bylaws if we're going to change how we're going to elect, do the voting, not election, but voting. And the bylaws are going to have to include, okay, when the nominations are cut off, how you're going to establish who gets to vote and how you're going to verify it. Because if you don't, you're going to have a lot of friction.
Well, that's a good point. We don't have to change anything. We have an established procedure.
Correct.
But and they did a lot of work. Tom and Ruth and Ann, all the people in Australia did a lot of work, but it was thrown together pretty much at the last minute, which is why we're talking about it here and going, throwing our hands up. We don't know what to do. We don't have to change anything. But if we are going to change something, we need to follow the established protocol that Mary's talking about. And we can't do that tonight. We can't do it in just a few hours.
You have to be realistic and what's reasonable with what we can do. I mean, it's not as if there's nothing happening between now and Fairwood 2.
And if you try to, it's all rushed.
There is a process already in place that is tried and tested and has worked. Now, that can happen, it can proceed. We have ballot papers, we have 2 nominations, and there's nothing to prevent that from going ahead. Back to your point then, is do we decide here that a wording will be put in place, will be accepted by the committee or the officers, and that will be put into the constitution for further clan gatherings and further.
Further approval of the clan membership.
Yes,
Right, that's what you have to do.
yeah, but it doesn't have to happen this weekend.
No.
Yeah.
Not if you don't.
So, well, no, that's absolutely, I'm clear with what you say. So continue with the process that we have. We have the ballot forms, we have 2 nominations. We go ahead with the criteria, which is a vote per family for a paid up family registration, because there are people who have memberships, and now we're going to run into, and I don't want to open up a can of worms, but following this clan gathering, there are a whole bank of memberships that will need to be paid. Otherwise they lapse, and we're looking at quite a significant number, 91 of them.
How do these people know they've left? Because with COVID and everything, I'm not even sure.
How people know, register, most people have people register online, and they would have registered the last clan gathering in 2018. Normally, it's a triennial, it's 3 years, but because of COVID, we rolled it over to 4 years.
Right.
You know,
And that was in the newsletter multiple times.
Well, unfortunately, not all of us.
Read the newsletter.
Sometimes, Tom does a beautiful job. You do a beautiful job. Those of us who live in this world of chaos and whatever, sometimes don't catch what we need to get. You know what I mean? And so I would hope, and it would be a significant increase to our financial status if we make sure everybody knew that they needed to.
Well, I believe there are reminders. I think Tom
Right.
Bruce
We can
did
be
a
more
really
aggressive
good
with
job.
reminders.
Right, Tom
Yeah.
Bruce planned to do, so the
Hold
lapse,
on.
the lapse category goes to 3 months after this get together.
Okay.
So after roughly October 1-ish, people who are in that lapsed category will get a reminder that they need to renew.
They're in a grace period
They're
for
in a
3
grace
months. and then
period
they
now.
start back.
Okay.
Yes,
I take your point, and please don't be flippant, or please don't be annoyed when I say this. You know, there's a 30 miles sign out there, and somebody's driving at 60 miles an hour, and the guard stops them and he says you're speeding. And the person says, I didn't see the sign. You're still going to get fined. Okay? So we send out stuff in good faith in our newsletters, on the internet. If people don't read it, if they don't see it, if they don't understand it, we can't prevent that. And that's why we continue to say it each time. And we're at the end of the day, we're a voluntary group. We're as reasonable as we can be. We are people who need to take responsibility and accountability for their own actions. I can't govern that. So I look to the membership to do the right thing. So to be clear about tonight then, we're going to work, sorry, forgive me, I think I'm a little bit tired, so my apologies. Tomorrow night then, we're going to work with the status quo. We're working with 2 nominations. We are working with the forms that Karen has. And what we're saying is that our wording will be put out to the paid-up membership that will be input into the Constitution for nominations and for elections going forward.
And just to add to that, Shane, that will include those types of things that you spoke about, is how does it work, who gets to vote, when do you get to vote, and so on.
Security.
The team and you might correct me if I've missed anybody, and Ron and Maureen and Tom and Ruth and yourself all involved in pulling together the answers to all of those types of questions about who can vote, when they can vote, how many votes you get, what it involves, deadlines and timelines and scheduling and all those types of things.
And we discussed this in Thursday night, you know, these are different projects that need to be done, so we can set up a subgroup to look at this. And if people wants to put a hand up and say, I'd like to be involved in that, I'd say absolutely, and bring it to the officers and say, this is what we're suggesting. There's 3 options, what do you think we should go for? Another little project we're looking at that we discussed is we're going to review the role profiles or the job descriptions of the various roles that are in place. They haven't been reviewed since 2008. So that's something that we're going to look at. You know, do we need to take off some of the duties or the responsibilities, or do we need to add some of the duties and the responsibilities in the world that we are moving forward into? So yeah, there are things that need to be done. What do you think, Thomas?
We have to be out of this room at 6.
Well, does anybody want to?
I have one final, your suggestion of having that sheet, your comment sheet about email us that's in the packet.
Yeah.
Is there, like you say, this weekend is so jam-packed. If you really want thorough comments, could you send us an email? We could fill out the form online and then send it back in after we return to the States, because I think that there's some really good comments that we have, but I don't have time between now and then to fill it out and hand it to you tomorrow night.
But and would you fill out the hard copy right now?
No, I would do it
No,
online.
no.
But both of us, I mean, I would rather take the time to fill it
In
out online.
in a past life, we always had what we call a hot wash debrief. So we wanted to know what the initial feelings were right now, and then we'd get the more detailed stuff later.
It's a good point though, because the survey is quite detailed. So maybe we need to look at how we do that for next gathering, that you put a more simplistic survey together that you do to get that initial reaction, but then you have something online, as you say, that you can think about and do a week or 2 weeks later.
Right, yeah.
So it's a really good point that maybe it's something we can consider. I don't think there's any reason why we can't try and get a version of the one that we have up online so people can choose. If you can fill it out and bring it to us at the back, but that's fantastic. If you want to take a week or 2 to think about it, I think we can probably find a way to do that.
That would be great.
Yeah.
With a deadline.
Yeah, with the deadline.
You gotta have that electronic copy somewhere.
Yeah, we do. I'm not sure how to
Just
to put it on.
Yeah, listen, I don't want to be the stick in the mud, but anytime I'm on a training course, I fill out a happiness sheet. And I like to fill it out as soon as the course is over. Because if I take it away with me, I never fill it out. And I've never seen a happiness sheet on a training course online to complete. I need to do it there and now to give my views. That's how I feel. That's my personal opinion of it. Grant.
That's what Survey Monkey's for.
Yep.
It's an online program that.
Yeah, Tom and Ruth don't like Survey Monkey. They have something else that they use, but that's the same concept. Well, when we asked about, would you come here now? If we had one in the US, would you come? Where would you suggest? That was the same non-Survey Monkey kind of thing.
Anything else? Okay, nothing else. I'm going to bring the meeting to a close. I'd like to thank you for being open, frank and honest. I really do. We have to be out of here by 6. I would like people to be out at the buses from about 6:15, because it'll take us about a half an hour to get down to Bunratty. I would like to leave at 6:30 to make it for 7 o'clock. So thank you very much, and I hope you have a great evening. Take care. What's going on, John?
Yeah.